All right. Now, Michael Keetley decided not to testify, but did you see when he had to raise his right hand and it was kind of like this? I mean, that's an important part of this case because it was actually a huge flare-up because the defense is saying, listen, this guy's not even capable of shooting someone. He's got this disability when he was robbed and shot. Let's bring in Court TV field producer Emanuela Grinberg, who was in the courtroom all day, joining us live from Tampa, Florida tonight. Emanuela, a little flare-up regarding the hand of the defendant. What do we know tonight? What was said and what was the outcome? What was the flare-up all about?
Hi, Vinny. Well, it's still the outcome, the upshot of it is still to be determined. But basically what happened was the defense, before Keetley declined to testify, they called two witnesses. The last one was the hand surgeon that treated him for injuries he sustained in that armed robbery a few months earlier, before the shooting that he's now standing trial for. He was shot, about 5 times in the upper, the left hand, and then the upper right arm. And this defense witness testified that the injuries to his right arm, as a result of those, he suffered severe nerve damage that basically rendered him unable to extend his hands or his fingers, and said that, and he testified that would make it very hard for him, or nearly impossible actually is what the doctor testified to, impossible for Keetley to hold a gun in his right hand and fire it and squeeze the trigger. So as a result, the state wants to put up a rebuttal case, and they want, as part of that rebuttal case, they want to introduce a video showing that as late as 2017, Keetley had used the facility of his hand, and that he was using his hand to smash a light bulb in his jail cell. And because another thing the doctor said is that the injuries to his hand were so severe that 5 to 10 years on, without proper treatment, he would not have regained control or use of that hand. So that kind of prompted this whole big thing about his treatment in jail. Leanne Gowdy, Keetley's defense lawyer, said, well, if they bring in that video, I'm going to talk about all the lengths I had to go to get him physical therapy and treatment while he was in jail. So you want to open up that can of worms kind of thing? And that's where we left it.
Wow. So, and really a telling moment there, but that moment is not in front of the jury, right? The jury did not see him raise his right hand like that. Has the jury seen his hand at all during the course of this trial? Do they, because to me that is better than any sort of expert could testify to if you actually see what he can and can't do with his hand.
Right, and actually the state implied outside the presence of the jury while they were making these arguments that they intend to present to the court an exhibit showing his movements and use of his hands during the trial for the court to consider as part of their rebuttal case. And really, they have seen him, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, Vinny, but he uses headphones, and sometimes he only uses his left hand to operate the headphones, put the headphones, raise them to his ear so that while the parties are having discussions at the bench, they've seen him, the prosecutor argued tonight that the jury has seen him holding his hand, cupping his injured hand, as if basically implying that he was faking. So we'll see again. We don't know if they're going to be able to introduce this video montage they were kind of describing. There's a lot of balls left up in the air as we adjourn this evening.
All right, let's take a listen to a little bit of that testimony from that doctor who testified.
When you're observing someone with nerve palsy and awaiting recovery, it's standard practice every 3 months to get an EMG to mark any progress. So like I said, sometimes clinically there's nothing, but electrically you see something. So it would help us possibly decide if we were going to do any future tendon transfers.
And at this time, is it fair to say there's still no sign of any radial nerve recovery?
That's correct.
So still through May of 2010, Mr. Keetley able to extend his right hand fingers?
No.
Was he able to extend his right thumb?
No.
Also noted that he has some diminished range of motion of the right shoulder. Do you see that?
Oh, yes.
And explain to us what you mean by that.
Well, diminished motion means in the shoulder, again, I was showing you how, this flexion, I'm going to stand up again. So flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, so those were not normal. Normal adduction is usually more than 90 degrees. Flexion is more than 90 degrees. Extension is a little less. And then we also have other types of motion in the shoulder. External rotation, which is not very large, but internal rotation is very important. So internal rotation, external rotation.
Would he have been able to actively extend his fingers in March of 2010?
No, and he's also not in a position of thumb extension either. His thumb is way down.
And that's where I was going with you. Let's talk about his thumb. Tell us about that.
So if someone is in a radial nerve palsy, even though their wrist is in a anatomically correct position, they can't elevate their thumb up. It's almost like you're almost like a knuckle walker. You can't get your fingers out of the way of your hand because you can't extend anything to grab anything. So even if his wrist is in a good position, he can't open his hand or open his thumb to grab anything.
All right, Emanuela, was there any testimony from any of the survivors whether or not he was shooting with his right hand or left hand? Because if his right hand is mangled, there's always an opportunity to just switch hands.
No, not really. There were no testimony about how he was holding the gun when he fired it. There was some testimony about him, the hand in which the gunman was holding the gun as he approached, but nobody talked about which hand he fired with. And in fact, even when they did talk about the hand that the gunman was using to hold the firearm, some of the witnesses were confronted with prior inconsistent statements that they made in depositions. So that's a bit of a wash.